Good morning, Brian.
Hey, Haley, you look beautiful,
Thank you very
smart,
much.
smart, strong. You don't just tell women they're beautiful. You also say, when they are, you're so strong, so solid.
Such an
Um,
interesting point that you just made. I do
yeah.
feel stronger today. Like, I feel like I'm stronger and better than ever before.
Oh, wow.
But it's interesting that you mentioned the beautiful, and I know we have a topic, but side topic.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I have a friend who feels it's an ego trip for him. He feels good when he tells women that they're beautiful because he likes to see their faces light up. And whenever he tells it to me, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of fake.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
just saying it
Yeah.
for everybody. And
Yep.
even though everybody deserves it, like when you know the backstory, it's kind of like, so do you actually see me as beautiful? Or are you just saying it like when people ask, how are you? And the like response is, I'm good. It's like the response is, I'm beautiful.
Yeah. I,
Sometimes I
I
think,
also, excuse me. I think that, I've learned this through the women's movement is that, it minimizes a woman's importance to say you're beautiful, and that's all you say. You don't, it's like they're a little trophy that you put on the side, but not somebody you want on the front lines with you. Uh,
right.
you're
And
not
it's,
strong or
and in this, you know, place that we're in, as a woman, I love to hear that I'm beautiful. But I also love to hear that I'm beautiful because you personally think I'm beautiful, not because you're putting me with everybody else and saying
uh-huh.
everybody's beautiful,
Hmm.
if that
Do
makes
you
sense.
also appreciate being told, that the person sees you as strong and
Yeah.
courageous and
And I'm sure it's difficult for men to navigate that because they're like, but I'm telling you beautiful, but you say it's not enough.
well, the other thing that's a trigger is smile. Smile, you look prettier. And women think, why the hell should I smile for you if I don't feel like smiling? And why are you the judge of what's pretty?
I think it's very, that sort of leads into our topic. And I was mentioning to you sort of the theme over Virgo season, which was pretty much from, I think, the 22nd or the 23rd of August up until yesterday or the day before. That was Virgo season. And it was a tough season for many people because it really highlighted relationships. It really highlighted where we're seeking validation outside of ourselves and using those relationships as our validation. And then it also very much looked at the, reciprocal energy, the give and the take. And I find for me that I do, generally I'm a really happy person. I'm usually always smiling, but there are days where I've got my own stuff going on.
Hmm.
And I get that response like, why aren't you smiling today? And it's just
Hmm.
like, I'm not here for you.
Hmm. I just happen to run into you.
Right. And I think it's that, immediately that raises that reciprocal energy question of when we're giving so much energy by trying to be the best possible version of ourselves, and the one day that we're not, and we are met with, why aren't you smiling today? It really raises that question, are you receiving as much as you give?
Yeah. Yeah. And people often misunderstand us. We had somebody tell us that somebody stopped them in the grocery store to ask, are Brian and Ray getting a divorce? And that's the furthest. I mean, that's like saying a Brian on Mars. And the person said no, and he said, "Oh, I read something. I thought that. So people, besides just looking at our faces and deciding, you know, whether we're beautiful or happy or whatever, people can take a look at our behaviors or our words and come to conclusions, you know,
It's very interesting.
that are unintended. Yeah, yeah. I like the topic of relationships, and uh, for me, in the last month or so, I've given a lot of thought to best friends. I asked Ray the other day, "Who's your best friend?" And he had to think and think and think, think. I was throwing out suggestions besides me, of course. And I have people who are very close to me and best friends, but don't live anywhere nearby. So they can't come by for cards and dinner or go to the mall together, whatever. But I don't have a lot of super, super, super close friends here. And I've been in the city for 20 years, at least. That doesn't mean I don't love people deeply, but I've had the experience of having a best friend. And when it ended, it was painful. We talked about that last week. Where'd you go? What happened? Boom. So I've been reflecting on that. And who am I without a best friend? I mean, that's basically what you're asking. Who am I outside of this best friend? And Haley, I'm going to shut up in a minute, but also when I imagine Ray gone, dead, I ask, what are you? What are you without him? And it's real hard for me to come up with an answer.
I think it's, not to discount how hard it is for you. I think it's been really hard for so many people over the last month because the energy has very much been asking that question. Who are you without these people?
And what have you answered yourself?
For me, it was a bit of a an aha moment, but also a painful aha moment because I realized that with all of the work that I've done to really empower myself, ultimately that source of validation is still outside of me, pointed on another person. It's not pointed on God. It's not pointed on my path. It's not pointed on my heart. So realizing that was a big moment of like, oh my God, who am I? And how true have I been? So it was a big moment of rattling my world and then starting to sort of ask the question, all right, I have this awareness. How do I revalidate or realign that validation away from this person to me? And for me, it was really helpful. And I was teaching this with my friends and clients that were experiencing something similar, to be able to see that validation as a beam of light from the solar plexus and see it pointed to that person who ultimately we seek validation from. And then sort of envision moving that light. And as you move it, it changes color and put it on the path in front of you. Allowing the path in front of us to be the only validation. So
go ahead.
It's almost as if we have, our heart lighting our path ahead, but it's also a light coming from our solar plexus saying, my path is my only validation.
Yes. If everyone disappeared, I would still need to know that I was okay. Going back a second, if you wouldn't mind, when you talked about God, it's not, you were saying that that's not where I'm getting my validation when I'm struggling with where am I getting my validation. But Haley, I recently thought that I've never felt alone in my life because since I was a little kid, I've always felt the presence of God. And we had a relationship. And, it changed and changed and changed. The right wing, adopting honk if you love Jesus, and a lot of struggle went with God. And is it universe? Is it life? Is it love? What is it? What do you want to call it? What are you comfortable with? But my reality is that I've always felt that I had a traveling companion.
I knew that there was God energy around me, source energy, whatever you want to call it. I knew that it was there. I could see it. I didn't believe that it was for me, that I was worthy of it, or that I was part of that group. I always saw it as sort of something that everybody else had. It wasn't for me. Like I was allowed to have awareness of it, but I never felt that God was with me. I had enormous anger towards God. My earliest recollection, my conversations with God and that energy were always very rageful. But having that awareness as I've gone through the hero's journey and learning about who I am, it's changed that conversation. So my relationship with that source energy has changed. But I think, when we look at relationships, when we look at validation, humans are the physical, they're tangible. Source energy is intangible energy.
Mhm.
So it's natural for us humans to point that validation at another physical being. And especially if some of those relationships have been from childhood or have been manipulated to where we now believe that that is the only source of validation, that is the only person that can say you deserve this or you don't deserve this.
Uh-huh. And the hero's journey is letting go of that person without killing them.
Is it? I think the hero's journey is having the courage to do what is right for you. And I have, over the last probably 2-3 months, I have this little motto that I've been really holding on to, which is do courageous things, do hard things, do kind things, always do the right thing. And I think the hero's journey is always a journey to figure out what is the right thing for you. And it takes courage, it's hard, and it takes kindness.
To yourself.
Always to yourself.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer says a wonderful thing. He says, practice being kind rather than being right, which I realize sounds like a bit of a contradiction to what I just said. But it's practice being kind to yourself when you're learning how to figure out what is right,
Uh-huh.
rather than being right from the egotistical perspective and trying to make a point.
Can you tell me what was the turning point for you with God? When did you come to no longer be rageful and find solace?
I think having other people that validated my journey,
Mm-hmm.
other people that could sit with me and say, oh, that's also what I experienced.
Mm-hmm.
That was helpful. And then also me learning more about myself and being open into who I am in terms of an energetic being, and being able to start not being afraid of what I see. Because the moment that I opened up into everything that I can see, I saw God right there. I saw the truth of God right there. And that
When you
resonated in my heart. And that was like a deep, drop in of, no, this is real.
and is that where you get your energy?
I get my energy from the source, whether it's God, Allah, Krishna,
Right.
whoever
Doesn't
it
matter.
is, the Big Bang, the universe. I get that energy, but it is not outside of me. It's in me. The Big Bang is in me. So it's that little light that, depending on what's going on around me, I have as much energy as I have courage to open up my heart.
And Haley, do you believe that all humans are experiencing the same awareness, or are open, or have the ability to the same awareness? The reason I ask, if I can, there's a podcast that I saw advertised where the person was talking about, it's not just our 5 senses that give us a sense of, who we are and where we are, that there is that energy that that you have acknowledged in yourself, extra sensory. And they talked about putting an elephant, a bat, a snake, and a human in the room, and talked about how each one experiences the room differently, right? Because of the elephant would be throwing sound waves over the ceiling, and the snake would be feeling heat, and so I thought that's very interesting. That sort of, I've been recently saying, quoting Jan Fraser, that we're only, thoughts stop us from being in the moment, right? That it's our senses that allow us. But this person was arguing that all senses go through thought, that we, in order to smell something, we have to think of the smell.
Well, I think it depends what comes first. It's the sense that comes first, and then it's processed in the brain and translated.
Yes.
So I think it becomes a thought, and there we have to decipher if the thought is real or not. There has to be that discernment.
Mm-hmm.
I think that my belief is, my knowing of my existence is that source energy is the same for everybody and every being. Everything that we experience on this planet is source energy. So that source energy is the same. How we experience it is different. And that's
Yeah,
based on our perceptions, our biases, how we were raised, karma. There's so much complexity that goes into understanding why each of us experiences this universe differently, why we experience the same thing differently.
and one of the things that I've come across in my mind recently is how extraordinarily privileged I was growing up. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about having a loving mother. You know, my dad was challenging, but he wasn't abusive in terms of emotionally abusive. I didn't grow up afraid in my house. It's like so many people I hear from, they had terrible childhood. And I had a great education and read good books. And so I think, okay, so what's your responsibility now? You know, you in the past, you wanted to imagine that everyone had the same starting point you did, but they didn't.
Mm-mm.
Is there additional expectation of us? I feel like, I've done a good job of giving back, right? But but I should have, given all of the advantages that I had. What do you think about that?
I think privilege is not associated with guilt. I think if you were blessed with certain privileges, your responsibility is to use those privileges to be the very best version of you.
Yep.
It's not to say I was privileged, therefore I must be guilty and spend the rest of my life trying to atone for that guilt.
Right. You can't do it. There's no end to it.
And I think, we're a little bit confused about that right now, because if you speak about privilege, immediately you're guilted. Immediately
Right.
you have to pay. And that is not my understanding of privilege. It's not my understanding of how this universe works. I think that if you are blessed, and you have the awareness of your blessings, it is your responsibility to embrace them, to empower yourself with them, to be the very best version you can be of yourself. And I think if you're in that energy of being the very best version of yourself, you're immediately in the highest service to all of humanity.
Haley, you actually get battered from both sides. When you said, I was thinking of the other side, but if I say I'm privileged, then I know lots of people who would say, yes, you are, and we weren't. And so you need to get off stage for the rest of your life so we have a chance at the microphone. Mm-hmm. And on the other side, we hear, oh, we're having a woke experience. And they make fun of us for having this awareness, right, that we had privilege. Shut up, quit trying to wreck things, just go along with the way things are, right? So it's a hero's journey too.
It's a hero's journey. And I think if you look at the sort of the tone of this conversation today and the tone that it has been for the last month, relationships and validation, if we're looking outside of us to be validated, that fuels the conversation of woke or privilege and guilt.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're allowing ourselves to just sit and allow the validation to be our own path in front of us, then it's not about woke, it's not about guilt. It's truly about what are your blessings, regardless of where they measure on humans, our current idea of success,
mm-hmm.
what a blessing is. What are you going to do with them? Who are you going to be today?
Mm-hmm. Who are you going to be in this phone call? Right?
So
I mean, it's a minute by minute thing.
And that is the hero's journey, is to continuously be learning how you can be better. And for me and many others over the last month, it was, here's where you have an energy leak. You're validated yourself based on somebody else's idea of who you should be. Is it time to bring that piece back onto your path?
The Tao Te Ching says that if you seek others' approval, you will be their prisoner for life.
Life, I 100% agree with that. And I think, as somebody who has undergone that experience himself of realigning the validating and helping others realign the validating, The freedom that comes with the awareness, even though it hurts, of, oh no, I'm still looking at this person to validate my existence.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom comes with awareness, and then there's freedom with doing something about it and doing what you can to change the mindset. That freedom, that peace is the passion, it's the motivation.
And how do you help teach people that lesson? Because it can't be just thought, right? I mean, if you're presenting this thought to the person who's come to you to talk about this, it's not just Haley's thought that changes the way I see myself and the validation I get from other people. What's the process, Haley?
All healing is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. It's not just one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to change the mindset, you have to deal it with the mental perspective, which is the mindset. Practicing and using mantras to be like, no, 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 I'm not validating, I'm validating over here.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a physical aspect of that. There has to be a moving of the body to get the energy readjusted. There has to be using your senses to become present. That's physical. There has to be the emotional response too of, as I was saying, it's heartbreaking when you realize that your validation is at a person who doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to bring it back, sit with that emotion. Because that emotion that we're so afraid to sit in has every answer in how to change the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the spiritual, which is the faith. And one of the learnings or the teachings that I got over the last month in my journey with this was that rage transmutes into faith.
Would you say more about that, would you?
The rage we feel when we realize that either on our own or by somebody else's doing, we've been misled, that rage
Okay.
can be transmuted into faith. And the healing is being able to say, I'm going to use all of that rage and I'm not going to use it as motivation to move forward. I'm going to use it and turn it into faith. Because a lot of our path is faith. We can say mantras like, I'm worthy, I'm accepted. It's faith, it's the spirituality that allows us to start taking it in a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more.
One of the, our basic theme is the hero's journey, with Joseph Campbell as our sort of my inspiration behind it. And I was thinking that anybody, Haley, who faces their faith and their religion, right, and allows himself to leave their organized religion, but keep their faith, is a huge journey, because for many of us, there is a rage, right? When we realize how much time has been spent being fooled by or misled by these people who know more than we do, and often less than we do. So we rage, I can speak for myself, rage at the amount of time that I let them judge me and take away from me my sense of self, and then let go of the rage because it doesn't suit me, it doesn't serve me, right? That I start to look at my faith, right?
Exactly. You allow, and it's, I don't think it's a letting go of the rage. You don't just let go. You allow the rage to turn into faith. This is alchemy.
Yeah.
And when you can let it be faith, you calm down. And then that's the letting go. And I would say, that rage that you have to religious institutions, some people have that rage towards their parents or their spouse or ex-spouse, to their best friends who left or suddenly decided that they didn't want to be in a friendship anymore. That rage, and it has everything to do with, I thought I knew the truth.
Yes, I thought I was operating all of this time and that we were on the same page as to what is real. No?
Yeah. And that rage and resentment really, again, we think we're pointing it to another person, but it's 100% towards us.
Yes.
We're
How
so
could we be
angry
so
at
stupid?
ourselves
Yep.
for being duped. We
Yeah.
thought we were smarter.
How could we be so stupid as to go along with this? Boom.
And now look at all the work I have to do.
And now, yes, how do I put it all together?
Yeah.
What pieces do I keep and what do I push to the side?
It's, this is why it's not an easy journey. This is
Uh-huh.
why, it takes so long and why many people aren't doing it right now because it's not easy.
And I find, Haley, that from my own life, that once I separate from church, family, later in my life, I find myself coming back, right? Having a totally different sense of myself in family and a different sense of myself in religion. Not that I'm going to, suddenly go to mass all the time, but I don't hate them.
Mm-hmm.
I see they did the best they could with what they had. Okay, so here's me now. And it's important that even if you don't see me as the real me, I'm going to be the me that I know myself to be while I'm with you.
Yeah, and that motivation for me is peace. The
Mhm.
sense of peace that comes whenever I have these sort of shakeups that align me with my truth. The peace that comes from them is, like I say, I can't compromise it, I can't negotiate it, and it's more me. And so, when I spoke with you this morning and we greeted each other, and I said, I've never been as strong as I've been than today. I've never been more me than I am today because I went through a month of, not so much a month, more like 2.5 weeks of understanding that my truth was not true
Mhm.
and coming back to my truth.
Mhm. Haley, all of what we're doing, are we addressing the point that you said was the big issue for everyone for the last month with relationship?
I think we are because, we use our relationships to validate our existence. We
Uh-huh.
base ourselves on, I'm happy if this person is giving me attention. I'm happy if this person says, I love you. I'm happy if this person says, I did well. I'm
Right.
happy if I know that they're going to message me. I get really anxious if they don't.
Yes.
This is the outside validation. And it comes down to, again, that first question you said, who am I when all of this is pushed out and it's just me? Where am I seeking my validation? Do I truly believe in myself if I'm looking at other people to say that I did a good job or I'm loved if this person pays me attention?
And you can get hooked by that.
Oh, I think we're all hooked on it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we're all hooked on it. We're all codependent.
Do I have in the circle of my friends the people that other people wish were their friends?
Do I
Right.
have enough friends?
Mm-hmm. And Haley, from my experience, that's a question asked generally more often by younger people than older people.
Absolutely.
Older
Absolutely.
people are happy with just a handful because you
Yeah.
can't keep up with it all. Younger people want to know, am I in the crowd? Am I part of what's going on or not? And if not, why not?
Yeah. So I think it's, when we look at the toughness of the hero's journey and the toughness of life, faith is important because it reminds us that everything is happening for us. Everything is here to get us to the best version of ourselves. And it's hard because we resist it. We have an expectation of how it should be versus how it really is. And that is the measure of hardness. And I'm, in every single one of my cases where I've been like, this is hard. It's because I wanted it one way and not being open to that there might be another way that might actually be better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we use our path to be our validation, we can see that every single time that we've had the faith to go through hard stuff, it's worked out better than we could have expected.
And where does the awareness come that you have to make a different journey than you have been?
I think when things don't work anymore, when you're anxious, when you're wobbling, when you're shaking because you have no clarity, and you can't make a decision for yourself. I think that's when that's the awareness coming and saying, what you're doing isn't working out for you. There's a better way.
Mm-hmm. Hurt feelings can be like that. Your hurt feelings. So at some point you say, well, why am I so hurt? Why am I giving them that power?
And I think, the other part of this, we've spoken about relationships, we've spoken about validation, is the reciprocal nature of our relationships. We feel hurt when we give more than we receive.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, well, are you giving more because you're validated by giving more and that makes you feel good?
Mm-hmm.
So those hurt feelings are really important. And
yeah,
again,
why
they
are you
are validated when other people acknowledge them. They don't have to. And it's not wrong if they're not looking and saying like, oh, I'm sorry, I hurt you. If they don't acknowledge that you're hurt, it's not their job. It's your job to acknowledge that I'm hurt. Why am I hurt? Oh, I'm being a bit of an overgiver.
Yeah, I don't have boundaries. And I'm angry at the person for not being more appreciative and reciprocal.
Yeah.
Right. And I think those of us who are codependent, often middle child, who seek to make sure everyone's happy, we find often at some point that we're way over the limit and we don't have any boundaries.
Well, I think we're also taught from a very early age. I was working with my healer yesterday, and we were working through lying, and this. We're taught at a very early age to lie.
How so?
We're taught at a very early age that if we feel a certain way, our parents are like, oh no, that's not really what you mean.
Yeah.
We're taught very early on to say, when people say, how are you? You just say good. It's polite. That's lying. We're taught very early on that your only reason for being here is to make other people feel good. We're all taught that. That's a lie. So we're taught very, very early on that lying is the way to move forward. Lying is communicating. So I think when you start questioning the truth and being curious about what is the truth, lying becomes a really big thing. And when people are not honest, for whatever reason, that becomes a huge trigger.
And Haley, I have found that when you embrace honesty, it can be too much for some people. It's too intense.
It's too intense. It's very intimidating.
When I asked you how you were doing, I did not really want to know how you're doing.
I don't really want to be like, well, how much time we got? Because it's been a bit of a ride.
Right.
Because for me too, in how am I doing? I don't want to open up all of that stuff I just completed. I want it to be closed, done. So I think again, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual healing is sustainable because when we've done the healing, we use our senses to become fully present. And when you say, Haley, how are you? And I'm like, you know what, I'm good. I've never been as strong as I've been today. That's the truth. But tomorrow, if you ask me and I'm like, Brian, I'm good. Then I'm like, hey, are you really good?
Yeah, I really want, when Haley, I ask everybody, how you doing? I really want to be told how they're doing. And it often leads, especially in grocery stores, my great petri dish, petri dish. In the grocery store, I'll ask the staff, the help, how you doing? And they're not used to being asked that. And often I'll get, I'm having a hard day. Well, tell me about it. My dad died. So come in here. Come here. We're going to hug. Give me a hug. I asked a woman the other day at the same grocery store, a different department. how you doing? She said, oh, okay. I said, that sounds like a C plus to me. And she started laughing. And I said, how about a hug? And she eagerly took the hug, right? Hugging is a great way to pass loving
Hugging is a
energy.
great way, and also, letting people know that they're not the only ones that are having a C plus day.
Yeah.
Um, for me, it's a little bit difficult because I can always see in people's eyes, I can see in their face that they're not
Mhm.
okay. So immediately as they say, "Oh, I'm great," and I'm like, "Man, you just lied to me."
Yeah.
But for me, I feel like one of the greatest ways that we can be of service is to be honest about how we're actually feeling. So when somebody says, I'm okay, we can say, you know what? It's okay to be okay. Is there anything I can do? Or do you need a hug? Or, you know what? I'm here if you need me. It doesn't take that much time or that much energy,
Right.
but it does open up for that
Right.
10-minute conversation where somebody's just like, but you're like, I'm
Right.
exhausted. I've got to go now.
Yeah. And you know what? And it's perfectly okay to say, wow, I said this, this is, you've got a lot going on. Um, I wish that I could go through all of it with you, but I want you to know something. I really am available to you if you want to talk further.
Yeah.
I got to pick stuff up and the ice cream's melting in the cart and, you know, but I promise you, we can come back to this so that you just don't move on and have them say, well, why did he even ask me, and
Right.
why did I tell him, how I'm feeling? Or I thought we had a better friendship than that, he just blew me off.
Yeah. It's a very, the human experience is very interesting. And we need to remember that we're here to experience all of it, not just the good,
Mhm.
not just the bad, not just the privilege, not just the underprivileged. And it takes enormous courage to be open to all of it. And when I say open to all of it, going into it with an open mind instead of, going into it with this is the only way it should be.
I find myself lately, and I may have said this to you in the past, doing a lot of reminiscing in my mind, thinking about people in my life and recapturing those moments of pleasure and joy and nodding in affirmation and gratitude that I was lucky to have these people. I think that's maybe something you do as you get older and have more time on your hand, or you feel like the clock, the sand is going through the hourglass, and you don't necessarily need to take on anything new.
That's, I feel like, another topic, which is time.
Yeah,
Our faith in time.
assuming that we're going to have the whole hourglass. You know,
Who says
I'm
it's
gonna.
just one hourglass? What happens if you get a second one and it's bigger?
Yeah.
Time is a very interesting concept. And man, we resist the idea that time works for us.
W.H. Auden said, um, "Time will say. People will say, time will tell." W.H. Auden, who was the great poet laureate of England, said in one of his poems, "Time will say nothing, but I told you so."
It's my relationship with time, I think, is very synchronistic, not synchronistic, is almost the same as my relationship with the universe, with God. I'm almost seeing them as one and the same. Time is just another word for God. If we don't trust time, then we're not trusting God.
Well, what if you don't believe in time? What if you see it as an arbitrary? I mean, who came up with how many days in a month, and who came up with the names of these things, and
I
who
think
came up?
if you even take that definition away, there's always this wanting now and the expectation of what should be and what shouldn't be. And the space in between that is what I call time. And I think
Okay.
when you start measuring it then by hours, minutes, days, weeks, months, years, I think it's our resistance to that space And our resistance to the idea that it's actually working for us that makes life difficult, because we're in the mindset now that time is running out. It's not working for us. We're working for time.
Now, you said that this is a great topic for another
I
conversation,
know.
but we have a few minutes and I'm getting a little lost here, which is I'm glad to be able to acknowledge. Say more about time, because how is it relevant to the individual in terms of how they approach time?
So there's time, which is the second, the minute, the hour, the day, the week, the month, the year. There's time, and that's how we measure the distance between what we want and it manifesting. It's the space.
Give me an example, please.
So, for instance, if I have a business and I'm wanting to turn a profit, and I'm like, I'm going to give myself from here till November of 2023 to make $1 million.
Okay.
That space in between is time.
Right.
That space in between is space of, will it happen? And we resist anything that happens differently from, this is what I want in this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
When we realize that if we're validating, our path is our validating, and we're only validating based on our path, time becomes something that works for us. We have faith that everything's happening for us in divine timing, synchronicity.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it happens in a day, doesn't matter. Whether it happens in 2 weeks, doesn't matter. Whether it happens in 5 years, it doesn't matter, because I have faith that it's happening at the right time. And in my experience, being on this path of being somebody that is freaked out by time and still learning how to work with time and allow time to work for me, every single time that I look on my path that I thought I was running out of time and literally had to fall on my knees and pray for a miracle, it happened at exactly the right time, the exact time that I needed it.
Is the average mind able to grasp that concept of?
Yes. Do we want to? Is it comfortable? No.
It's accepting that everything. Yeah, it's hard to talk to people too about it, because some people think, well, then you believe in predestination, you believe in,
and we have no control. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I don't argue with people anymore, or even try to prove the existence of God or angels, or I just don't. It's, you either believe or you don't believe, and then you want more meatloaf. I mean, it's just and
it's also, coming back to having faith in time. Had somebody tried to tell me that God was real like 25 years ago, I would have been like, dude, shut up. Nobody wants to hear that. It took time for me and my own path, my own unique experience with time, with the human experience, to open up and realize that my idea of God is my idea of God. And for me, that's very true. But can I go and have a conversation with an Orthodox Jew and say that our gods are the same? No. Because the Orthodox Jew will be like, no, this is the only God.
But you can say that they're the same.
I can say, but is that a conversation if it's just one way? If we look at the reciprocal energy there.
Right. Yeah. I'm eager to hear what that Orthodox Jew has to say about God, because I can learn from anybody,
I find it fascinating.
They're not going to agree to my God.
They're not going to agree. And I think this is the beauty of the human experience, with all of us having a unique experience of exactly the same thing. If we're curious enough, my God, it can be fun learning about other people's perspectives.
Yeah, and why they have the perspective. Not just what is your image of God, but tell me about your background. Where'd you grow up, and did you have a faith? There was a religion in your family. Did you go to church, and have you had any challenging experiences? Things
Yeah.
that help me understand how you got to where you are in your belief system.
And I think it's, what is your definition of privilege? What is your definition of religion?
Mm-hmm.
It's incredibly exciting to experience humanity.
Yes, but in order to do that, though, from my perspective, you have to lower your defenses. You can't, like the game Stratego, where you used to hide your mines and big things behind this wall. You can't do that,
You have
because
to be vulnerable.
you have to be, because otherwise you're not going to hear or sense anything other than what you believe to be true.
Yeah.
And that package that you believe to be true is not going to be the same one when you at the end of your life. It's
May
just
not
not.
even be true right now.
That's exactly right. But you are the one who has to discover that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's true to you. It serves its purpose at this moment. But you're the one that has to discover. And the way we discover is often not just on our own, or sitting in the desert. It's having these kind of conversations.
And it's
Haley thinks that way. That's really, Haley found inspiration in that book, huh? I ought to look at it, right? I mean,
I think
we help each other.
It's also, in conflict. We find out the truth through conflict.
Yeah. That's harder.
It's hard. It's not fun.
Yeah. No, it isn't.
But conflict teaches us a better way of being. It helps us come into a truer way of being.
And when I'm in conflict, the challenge for me is to step back and not personalize it.
Not personalize it, and practice being kind instead of being right.
And listening rather than always having an answer before the person finishes what they have to say.
Yeah. That being said too, though, practice being kind rather than being right is reciprocal. It's be kind to that other person, but also be kind to yourself. Don't sit there and say my feelings are not validated because you're not agreeing to them. Or I just need to be kind and let you win this. My feelings don't count. That's
right.
What I'm saying here. Practice being kind rather than being right to yourself and to them.
Yeah, I agree. That an example can be, you do something kind. The instinct is to look for an affirmation of it. But what's really going to be meaningful to you is if you say to yourself, Haley, you're a kind person. And that was a nice thing. That was a nice thing you just did.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Haley.
And it's, for me too, that kindness is also being able to say, damn, I'm hurt. My feelings got hurt. And this other person is acknowledging it. I get that. I'm going to be better now. I'm going to make sure that I'm more aware of where I'm giving more than I receive and try and put a boundary in sooner.
Right.
That's kindness.
And then I also take it as an opportunity, once I've allowed myself to step back, as to say, okay, now why were your feelings hurt? What is it that you expected that you didn't get? And is that the way you want to enter, the next situation?
Right.
Or do you want to learn to change your expectations? Right. I mean, sometimes if Ray and I have, a challenging moment, and I know we need to wrap it up. When I'm walking the dog, I can figure all kinds of stuff out where I'm able to come back and say, you know what? I've got a totally different perspective. I want you to know that I understand where you're coming from.
How beautiful time is.
Yeah.
Giving you the space to connect to wisdom and clarity.
Yeah. Well, I love you, Haley Evans.
I love you too, Brian. It's been wonderful chatting today, and I'm so glad we were able to chat today. Thank you so much.
And next time you will, whatever topic, and we may have a guest, who knows, right?
Who knows? But you know what? I doubt we'll ever be lost for a topic.
You're right. You and me, I don't think so.
Love to you, Ray and Lincoln, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you, Haley. Bye-bye.
Bye.